So, welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast, RJ Spina.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited. Thank you for having me, Michelle. My pleasure.
Yeah, I was just telling you, I'm so excited to find you or to have you on because I found you about a year ago and I became slightly obsessed with your teachings. It was like everyone I know, I'm like, you have to listen to RJ. You have to listen to RJ. So it's been a long time coming, and I'm thrilled to have you on the show today. Something that really caught my attention was hearing your story. So, for people that may not know who you are, I'd love if we could just start with your story. Um, and let's just start there.
Sure. Yeah, the short version, the short version of the story is that on April 23rd, 2016, I had been sick for several months, but on that day, I became quote unquote permanently paralyzed from the chest down. I was told I had 48 hours to live due to severe sepsis. I was diagnosed with severe Hashimoto's autoimmune disease, type 1 diabetes, pancreatitis, thyroiditis,
Mm.
and I was suffering from something called autonomic dysreflexia, where your autonomic system just doesn't work anymore. Your breathing, your pulse, your heart rate. You can have an aneurysm or go into a coma. So
Mm.
it was a bevy of life-threatening conditions. I had emergency surgery, something called a laminectomy, where they actually scrape the infection off the spine
Mm.
with the idea of the sepsis would no longer be lethal, even though I was told to fill out a will if I didn't have a will, because they said you have about 48 hours based upon what we can see. So,
Mm.
so what happened is we had that surgery. I was
Mhm.
paralyzed before, and there's a video of this, as you know, on my website. You can see
Mhm.
surgeon's notes. You can see my MRI. This is not spiritual fiction or a medical canard. This really occurred. So I woke up from surgery that
Mhm.
next morning at exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up into what is authentic cosmic consciousness. I remembered, and that's really the right word. I remembered how healing and self realization or enlightenment actually works. And
Mhm.
I started explaining right there in the ICU to the nurse how it actually works, what the metaphysical process is of self healing and liberation. And I explained it in great detail. And I told her that in exactly 100 days, I would heal myself of permanent paralysis and all of these things that I have been diagnosed with, and I will transcend all ill health and disharmony, and I will walk out of here under my own power. And of course, maybe in the moment I was explaining, she probably thought it was effects of the anesthesia.
Yeah.
This, but she was transfixed by the information I was relaying to her, because it was Michelle, it was so specific that it just couldn't be some kind of rambling about something. And she I remember the look in her eyes. She's like, "How do you know this?"
Mm.
And I said, I remember. I remember. And the context, the briefest, and of course in exactly 100 days, just as I said I would. And I filmed the whole thing in exactly 100 days. I walked unassisted, and I show no signs of any of the ill health, any of the life-threatening conditions that
Mm.
were occurring. And I think just the briefest of context is that when I was a child, I used to say that if I ever get sick, I'll just heal myself. This is something I used to say all the time, which
Mhm.
is obviously a very bizarre thing to say. And if someone would have asked me, okay, how would you go about doing that? I wouldn't have been able to be specific about it, but I knew
Mm.
that I knew. And
Mhm.
so it was almost like I was remembering what was going to happen, which sounds like an oxymoron, but it's
Mhm.
not. So, and these understandings, me being able to put myself back together and reach what we call self realization, it's the same teachings that I use for the first book that's going into
Mhm.
its 10th printing, and I don't know how many tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people across the globe now that have availed themselves of the teachings and the books have radically changed their life, not just their health, but their perspective on themselves, and therefore the reality that they create for themselves.
Mm. right there alone, I have like 25 questions that I can ask you. So much for all these other questions I got here. Okay. I'm going to break it down a little bit. So, what were some of the awarenesses that you had? So you're in the hospital and you said you had this you started remembering, I know how to do this, and you're sharing it with a nurse. What did you remember? Like, what can you give us a little bit more there?
Yeah. So the remembering the specificities of the remembrance are actually what makes up the ascend the frequencies healing technique, which is captured in the first book, Supercharged Self Healing.
Hmm.
So a lot of it had to do with going into a higher state, a much higher state of consciousness. Now,
Hmm.
when I say that, it's really going deep, deep, deep within the self with the capital S, the fractal of God that we all are, going deep within that to the point where the creation or form and function of our human form is created. So if you go to a certain level within yourself, it's really the genesis of what this suit is. And if you go to the genesis or the source point of it,
Hmm.
and you make adjustments there, that then gets what I've discovered or remembered, that then gets translated in frequency. You could think of, here's the analogy that I use. If you remember a slinky at
Hmm.
the top of the stairs and the slinky
Hmm.
goes down the stairs. So at a higher state of consciousness, it's the original perfect blueprint of our form and function. And then as we descend, as we're projected into an incarnation here on this planet,
Hmm.
that perfect blueprint, as we come down, keeps getting translated, almost like a slinky going down the stairs, or we go from one architect's drawings to a translation of another, to a translation of another, and another, and another. And this relates to our chakras and our energetic templates.
Hmm.
So the point of this is that what you do at the source point, at the core, at the building blocks of form and function, automatically affects all those different blueprints of this. So you make that change there, and then it eventually shows up
Hmm.
within physical form. So it's really the opposite of how we've been brainwashed to treat the body
Hmm.
first, where the
Hmm.
body is the last place that everything shows up. It's the least effective way to
Hmm.
do to, and there really is no healing by just treating the body, because it's kind of like clearing out a basement that's been flooded while the leak is on the second floor. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter how often you treat the body. The
Hmm.
problem is either in the emotional body, the mental body, the astral body, the celestial body, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you go
Hmm.
to the core, you make the tweak there, you align yourself with perfect form and function, and then eventually the body actually has to catch up to that. So that's,
Hmm.
I go on and on. I won't go on and on, but that's essentially the core remembrance, is that to treat at the core, and
Hmm.
then everything else will fall into place.
So for 100 days when you were in the hospital, you aligned yourself. And I'm just going to break it way down. You aligned yourself. I think about this. You aligned yourself with your core. Is that how you would break it down, basically?
Yeah, yeah. So you can think of that as what people call uh, enlightenment or self-realization. So
Hmm.
what we do is we attune the body-mind complex
Hmm.
to the direct fractal of God, to the self with the capital S. And the body mind complex then automatically has to align itself to the perfect design and form and function of who and what we really are. And it's the body's designed all by itself to self repair and self heal. We
Hmm.
get in the way through thinking we know how healing works, and we don't. And that's one of the things that I see, all the thousands of people that I've treated, is that most of us think we know how it works. Well, if we actually knew how it works, all of us would be healed. We have to have the humility to understand that we actually don't know how it really works. Otherwise, none of us would
Hmm.
struggle with health. So
Hmm.
that humility allows us to start over. And by starting fresh, which is kind of like a meditation magic trick, which is just to pretend you just arrived here, no
Hmm.
past, no future,
Hmm.
and the mind stops, and now you're automatically aligned, and it's from there that we do the ascend the frequencies healing technique. So if we're operating from the perfection rather than operating from a state of confusion or mental chaos.
Mm. So it's not about visualizing. It's not about imagining and manifesting. It's about aligning,
Yeah,
to break it down again.
that's exactly right. So if we can start to understand that
Hmm.
what we are, forget body mind complex for a moment,
Yeah.
forget the human condition.
Yeah.
What we actually are is whole and complete. It is a divine fractal of God.
Mm.
So we are all that.
Hmm.
Now, we take our attention and we leave that space and we go into the emotional body and the mental body and the lower astral body with all our beliefs. And that throws everything out of whack, out of alignment. So
Hmm.
that is the electromagnetic interference or the ego mind identity, which is the broadcast of everything that's set out here, and we align ourselves to this signal. It's not our true signal, and we're out of alignment. So it is actually a destructive process rather than a constructive process. We're
Hmm.
not adding anything. We're already perfect. The
Yeah.
key is to be able to start from there
Hmm.
and then do the meditations and the exercises. But it
Hmm.
is the mind thinks, and that's just a thought, but the mind thinks that everything is a constructive process or an additive process. Well, the truth of the matter is it's the opposite. It is a destructive or letting go and the conscious recognizing of all the things that we have misaligned ourselves with and realizing that's not who and what we are. And
Hmm.
as we cleave away at our story, our ego mind identity story,
Hmm.
as that story disappears, so does our story of ill health. So for me,
Hmm.
healing is the deconstruction of the false self. And
Hmm.
as a return to the true self, the body mind complex just literally puts itself right back into alignment.
Wow. Okay. What about people that um, arrive here, babies that are born ill or sick or that kind of thing? How does that happen?
Well, most of that has to do with misperceptions, misunderstandings, and misidentifications that that soul has aligned itself with in prior or previous incarnations. So it's carrying
Mm.
the misprogrammed energies
Mm-hmm.
that it has so identified itself with. And when you deeply identify yourself with, you're actually starting to inform those templates that we
As
were
you're
talking
coming
about.
down on the slinky. Got it.
Literally, literally. So
Got
if you have a misprogram, that misprogram will get translated by all those templates, and eventually the last template is this physical form.
it.
And so the
Mm.
misprogramming then shows up in the issues that you're talking about. And it also another aspect of that. That's the main reason or cause for those things.
Mm-hmm.
The other is some souls will purposely take on,
Mm-hmm.
you could think of it as healing the ancestors or burning off of karma. They're kind of related. So some souls will come here out of service and take on quote unquote burdens that
Mm-hmm.
don't personally belong to them, even though it's all one thing. But
Mm-hmm.
they'll take it on personally because they feel that that's how they can be of service. So they'll take things on that don't belong to them in order to transcend them and then therefore heal all those that came before them.
Mm. I love it. Okay. So you talked about, I want to hear your definition of the ego.
Okay, yeah. So I go into, as you know, I go into great detail. So talking
Which I
about
love. Yes.
yeah. That so I felt that our the definition that we've used for a while of ego wasn't quite
Hmm.
accurate enough. So I call it the ego mind identity, and
Hmm.
it's who we think we are, how we feel about ourselves, and that's the emanation that goes out, and that emanation is actually how our so-called outer reality is created. Now, the ego mind identity is actually created through incarnation.
Hmm.
So we are no longer connected, consciously connected to where we come from and who and what we really are. So as we're projected or born
Hmm.
into the human condition and the lower frequencies here, where as we're coming down, we're losing consciousness.
Hmm.
We're literally losing who and what we really are and our connectivity to everything. And so by the time that we get here, Michelle, it's the disconnection is nearly complete. which is why we come here. Who am I? What is the point? What is the meaning of life? So
Mhm.
instead of going in and
Mhm.
realizing the self or self-realization, what we do is we create a character based upon identification with our suit. And as soon as you identify with being a physical being, you're going to identify with what the physical suit produces, which is thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations, and the
Mhm.
experiences that the body has. So
Mhm.
now we start creating a character. So we pick a religion, we pick different belief systems, we pick different roles, we pick different concepts, we pick different so-called knowledge, and we misalign ourself, this perfect, whole, and complete being. We
Mhm.
misalign that with all these different things. And if you add up the summation of all of our misperceptions, misunderstandings, and misidentifications, that is what I call our ego mind identity. And from a purely physics
Mhm.
perspective, EMI also stands for electromagnetic interference. And,
Mm.
and so that's all the data, right, that we keep picking up and aligning ourselves with. That's not our true signal. And
Mhm.
so when you
Yeah.
put that all together, that's our false character. That's our ego mind identity.
So what you're saying then is that we really start building this ego identity right from birth because we're so separate from where we came from. And then that just builds and builds and builds. So then is there at some point we have most humans then completely disconnect from that true self, or all humans, would you say?
Well, I mean, it's through societal conditioning and brainwashing. Let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
Children are so playful and imaginative because they're still
Mm-hmm.
connected to their true essence, and our true essence is joyous and playfulness and imagination.
Right.
That's really what we are.
Mm-hmm.
So we slowly, it's almost like falling asleep, Michelle.
Yeah.
It's like you're tired, tired, and then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden you're asleep. All of a sudden you are unconscious to who and what you really are.
Yeah.
So yeah, it happens to everybody, and authentic, for at least from my direct experience, authentic self-realization or enlightenment is what really happens is that you actually just realize who you are, and you really become a reflection for everyone else's self-realization mirrored back to them.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't even have to quote unquote do anything. Your mere presence here
Mm-hmm.
will serve as a catalyst for other people's liberation. But it's quite universal.
Mm-hmm.
And just to put a finer point on it, the point of incarnation is to not incarnate again. It's not to do this over and over 1,000 times, 10,000 times, to have lifetime after that. That was actually never the idea behind the evolutionary cycle. The idea behind the evolutionary cycle was to have an experience here. The different data points within our life plan would be so shocking. It's almost like an energetic bucket of cold water thrown
Mm-hmm.
in our face that we would almost shock ourselves into realization that who and what we really are, that we planned all this, that we're not the human form. But there are, from my perspective, there's literally probably less than 5 people on the entire planet that are authentically self-realized or enlightened.
Well, wow, 5 people. So so what's the point of coming here? Why do we even come to Earth? Because if I'm awake on the other side of the veil, and then I come through the veil, or I'm veiled, and I'm born in this human form, and then it seems like our goal is to awaken. Well, I'm already awake. So why do we even come in and have this earthly experience, or all
Oh,
these earthly
the,
experiences?
the challenge, the challenge. We can only have the lower frequencies of the physical universe, or what people call the third dimension.
Hmm.
It's not, but we
Hmm.
can only have these type of experiences here, this type of level of difficulty, these
Hmm.
challenges, solidity, and therefore the sense of physicality.
Hmm.
It is the tangible experience of our intentions while we're on the other side of the veil where there is no tangibility.
Hmm.
So we get to come here for the tangibility of what it is that we desire to experience. And to be able to put ourselves back into alignment is the greatest challenge. Now, the point of the great challenge is the evolution of consciousness. The simplest way to say that is that all of us leave here with a more tender heart and a stronger back.
Mm.
And that's what evolution actually is. It's the deepening of what we are, which is love and wisdom, whose subsets are our talents and abilities. And through the obstacles that we give ourselves, like paralysis, whatever it is,
Yeah.
it forces us to go within and access
Hmm.
more of who, and that accessing of more of who and what we are is the evolution of consciousness. So we do it because it's a challenge, because it's an accelerant for our
Hmm.
own evolution,
Hmm.
and because it's available, Michelle. It's available to us. And part of being an eternal, immortal creator being, we want to experience everything, including the sense of limitation. We're
Hmm.
immortal and unlimited. So we're, all of us are like, well, what would limitation be like? Well, that would be fast. What would it actually be like to think that you die? That there's an endpoint. Wow,
Mm.
that would be fascinating. What about all these different challenges? And we'll be cut off from our higher self and from God. We won't be able to directly communicate. Wow, this would be fascinating. Oh my God, I could learn so much. That's that's why we do it.
Yeah, I hear all the time that that we line up on the other side to come in and take on these human suits, as you say, and to actually experience living in a body, to be able to taste chocolate, feel the wind
Mhm.
on your skin, make love, hug someone, hold someone's hand. We can't do that when we're in energy form. So I get that we do get very excited and line up and yes, me, I want to go, I want to go. But then we forget and we get here and we think, why did I pick this family? And there's no way. Why is God punishing me? And da 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 da. But you're saying that we choose it all.
We do choose it all, and everything is happening for us.
Yep.
So now, when we view everything from the human perspective, we don't understand anything, frankly. So we
Mm-hmm.
have to, and it's easy for me to say, don't view anything from the human perspective. That's like, well, come on. But the truth of the matter is, everything is literally happening for our evolution. Everything that we experience, we actually do
Mm-hmm.
co-create. There's
Yep.
no there's no such thing as a victim. So we're doing
Mm.
we're doing this for the depth and the richness and the tangibility of the experience, the tangibility of our intentions. Because when we're outside of the first full dimension, what people call 3D, 5D,
Yeah.
think of it as frequency. And once you get to the 12th frequency, all physicality stops.
Mm-hmm.
Everything becomes ephemeral. There's no tangibility to anything. So
Mm.
part of what we're deciding is to actually have a tangible physical experience of our intentions, because where we come from, everything would be non-corporeal. And so
Mm.
by coming here, we get to actually, just like you said, taste chocolate, hug someone, pet your
Yeah.
dog, make love. That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's in a very different form of when in our normal state, very different. So this is
Mm-hmm.
also, I'll just add, this realm is also quite intoxicating
Mm-hmm.
for the higher self, as we're a projection of the higher self, because where the higher
Mm.
self is, this does not exist. So
Mm.
once the higher self and the aspect that it's
Mm-hmm.
projected, which would be you or me,
Mm-hmm.
start to get a taste of physicality, it can become quite addictive and quite alluring. And this is how we actually create karma. It's this addiction to, whether it's the sensation of food or drugs or adrenaline or sex, or I
Mm-hmm.
mean, just pick something. We get addicted. And what that means is our energy, we lose ourself in the thing. And what's
Mm-hmm.
stuck to the thing is our energy. So karma becomes the addiction to anything here. And
Yeah.
once your energy is stuck to something here, where are you going? No,
Mm.
nowhere. And that
Mm-hmm.
has to do with the repetitive cycle of the evolutionary process, which I feel the teachings in the books and the courses and the classes and the workshops and the retreats
Yeah.
allow us to see this clearly, to understand it, and then have the prescriptive remedy in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what to do to transcend karma and then allow the greatest efficacy of the evolution of our consciousness possible.
Mm. So what do you say to people that again would ask you this question, why would I choose such a traumatic family? People have died, have been abused, or and then you have other people that have these really easy lives. you know, loving parents. It just seemed quote unquote easier versus someone else. Like, how does that happen? Why does a soul choose that?
Yeah. So let's as you know, I like analogies. So let's look at we watch the Olympics and we see the high dive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. So if someone goes up on that high dive and let's say they do a swan dive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is one of, even though I would have trouble doing it, it's one of the easier, at that level, it's one of the easier dives that you get. And that's why no one does it, right?
Yeah.
Because if you do a perfect swan dive, it's too easy. So even if you do it perfectly, you're not going to get a 10, a 9.5, a 9, 8. You're going to get a 6, a 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is it's not a challenge. Okay. But if we go up to the diving board and do a triple backwards somersault flip, right?
Uh-huh.
And you do a good job of it, not perfect, but you do a good job of it. That's a 9. That's a 9.5 degree of difficulty. So it's the degree of difficulty.
Mm.
So it's a
Mm-hmm.
risk reward. So
Mm-hmm.
we sign up, and we literally do. We sign up for these traumatic, from a human perspective. Why would
Mm-hmm.
anyone do that? I'm explaining why.
Mm-hmm.
Because the evolution, because our love and wisdom is accruing more through the challenge of trying to nail the backwards triple somersault because it's so difficult, as opposed to having a cake life where we sit on our couch, watch the Blacklist, and eat Cheetos. And Blacklist is a good show, but the last 2 seasons were terrible. So it's the degree of difficulty is where we get our evolution. That's
Yeah.
why we choose difficult incarnations.
Mm. So when it comes to self-realization, how do our lives change? You know, when we start
Mm.
having these awakening experiences, how do we know? Like what happens to people? How do we know that, wow, I think I'm awakening. Something's different about me. Feels different about the world. How would someone know?
Probably the first thing that we start to become consciously aware of
Mhm.
is that our interests are changing.
Mm-hmm.
The things that we used to really be into
Yeah.
don't have that same allure. They don't offer the same level of satisfaction, shall we
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
So our interests start to change.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. Now, as our interest starts to change, normally our inner circle
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even the next layer out will start to change, because really what's happening is that our
Mm-hmm.
frequency is beginning to change. And so the people that we used to hang out with, they're still on a certain frequency. They're still dancing to a very specific song. They're listening to
Mm-hmm.
98.5, whatever,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
So you used to listen to 98.5 too. And as you're waking up, all of a sudden you just turned yourself into 99.5. So now you can't dance with that same group anymore because they're literally listening to a different song.
Yeah.
So this is part of the awakening process. Normally, there's a shift in terms of interests, what you become passionate about, and also the
Mm-hmm.
people that are around you. And when we're not in resonance with something or someone,
Mm-hmm.
it just falls away, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. We all have to be comfortable with change, because without change, we
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be able to experience the next data point on our life plan. And so change
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
absolutely necessary. So we don't want to hold on to what we identified ourselves with before if it's no longer in resonance. We have to let that go to make room for the new experiences that we actually design for ourselves to occur during the incarnation for our own evolutionary process.
Mm, that's beautiful. That does make a lot of sense. I think about just people that would say, gosh, I just don't like to drink as much anymore,
Mm.
or I don't like to do this, or I'm really drawn to doing yoga or meditation or spending more time alone. And the people that I hang out with don't want to do that. So that makes a lot of sense. What do you say to somebody that is just chronically suffering in their lives? And you said in the beginning, one of the first things you said is there's no such thing as a victim, but some people would debate with you on that one, like, well, then why am I suffering? I'm stuck over here. What do you say to someone that's in that space?
Yeah, we're never a victim to circumstances because we co-create everything. What we are a victim of is our own lack of perception.
Ooh, that was good.
So if we are suffering,
Uh-huh.
now let me just give you my perspective on suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So suffering only occurs through identification. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
what that means is, it's body consciousness. So if we're in pain, or it's emotional, or it's mental, right? So we're having thoughts, or anguished thoughts,
Yep.
emotional upheaval, severe pain within
Mhm.
the body. Okay. Now the truth of the matter is, we're the awareness of those things. We're not those things. So we're just aware of them. So if we can think of a time lapse camera
Mhm.
as this endless sea of change keeps going by, the time lapse camera is not affected by what it is that it witnesses or that it's aware of.
Mhm.
Now, this is the same for us. What we really are, the self, the fractal of God, is completely and utterly unaffected by what goes on with the human character. Now, it's
Mhm.
because we lose ourself in our own creation, which is the creation of the incarnation, we then lose ourselves in what the creation is experiencing, and we identify with thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations,
Mhm.
pain. The
Yep.
suffering comes from identification. If you are
Mhm.
simply aligned with the self and you're just aware of these things, you do not suffer. Doesn't mean you don't feel pain. I certainly
Mhm.
feel pain, but I
Mhm.
don't suffer it because I'm just aware of it. Now, if we're going through a lot of this, the way to transcend suffering is to do exactly what I just said, is to start to work with the truth
Mhm.
that you're the awareness of it. And one cannot be the awareness and the victim at the same time. That's actually impossible.
Yeah.
So if we can rest in that knowingness that we're just the awareness of it, the sensations of pain, mental anguish, and emotional upheaval will start to lose its sway over our consciousness and our body of energy. So all of a sudden, things start to tamper down quite a bit just by doing what I said. And then, as that
Mhm.
is decreasing, the mental, the emotional, and the physical, as those symptoms are decreasing, what we can
Mhm.
then do, if they continue, when they come up, pain, emotion, or these thoughts, is to allow them to come up because they're trying to leave, because they're not you.
Mm.
The mistake that we make, from my perspective, the mistake that we make as these things are coming up is that we grab a hold of these things,
Mhm.
self-identify with them, and
Yep.
then really ruminate on it. It's like, oh, let me really figure
Yeah.
this out. Don't, do not. There's nothing to figure out.
Mhm.
This is very difficult for the human mind to take in, but there's nothing to figure out. If we shift, and by the way, if you continue with that, you allow these things to come up and you just meet it with awareness, the
Mhm.
self is so high frequency that it'll alchemize it. It'll just start to disappear. It'll just start to leave you. And this is part of how healing actually really works. Just meet it with presence. Just meet it as time lapse camera. Don't analyze, don't judge, because
Mhm.
it's trying to leave. It doesn't belong to you. And when we operate this way, this actually starts the self-repair and self-healing process. And it's the only reason why we are suffering is because we're stopping the
Mm.
self-healing and the self-repair process because of the program of our mind through self-identification with what we're aware of. That's the misprogram. And once we stop doing that, the program takes over and healing is automatic. And then when you add some of the techniques or understandings in the first book, it
Mhm.
supercharges it
Mhm.
supercharges your healing by an order of magnitude. And then we will realize that me overcoming all these things is actually your permission slip to do the impossible for yourself.
Mm. That's so good. I'm thinking about ruminating thoughts. I mean, so many people, so many humans in general have. I just had ruminating thoughts this morning. I was in the shower. I felt like I was in the shower with 10 people. I was like, I was like, stop, and I said, and I thought, I do this work. I know what to do here. And I sat there and I thought, no. And I stepped, and when I stepped out of the shower, I left all the voices in the shower. I said,
Mm,
okay, wow, isn't that interesting? Because I could feel myself getting anxious. I'm like, oh my, I had read one email about something from somebody, and it just one thought came and another thought came. And I said, I am so in this illusion. And so
mm,
when I stepped out of the shower, I left all those voices in there and I said, wow, isn't that fascinating? Look at what I just did. How cute is that? And I let it go and I left the shower and kept going on with my day. But I realize that's human. I mean, we over identify. And I was suffering in that moment. I was like, oh my God, I feel so heavy. This feels terrible. But then I did feel this rising up of my frequency, I guess is
Mm-hmm.
what you'd call it.
Mm-hmm.
And everything went neutral. I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm good. And I thought, isn't that so silly? I'm like making up all these stories based on this one little email that came in. And I was in this wild reality that was not true. So is that what we would do in order to just, and it's just a matter of continuing to come back to present moment, present moment, present moment? Or do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, and you're aware of these, what I call them instantaneous meditation magic tricks. So,
Mm,
essentially, our story,
mm-hmm,
right, is really the spell that we're putting over ourselves. That's really what
mm-hmm,
the voice in our head is really the spell that we're putting over our consciousness and our body of energy.
mm, okay.
Because whatever conceptualized reality that we create for ourselves,
Mm-hmm,
the body has the tangible experience of that.
mm-hmm,
So if we're wigging out, the body is also going to have to be in alignment because the body follows the mind. So
mm-hmm,
whatever reality we create, the body then has that tangible experience. And that's why most of us know that we make ourselves sick because that's absolutely true. But what most of us don't know is that the other side of that coin is also true. Through a greatly expanded state of consciousness,
mm-hmm,
the body also has the tangible experience of that as well. And
mm,
so the key is to bring ourselves back to the present moment so the story stops. And when we're in the present moment, we put ourselves in the parasympathetic state. And now the body can function normally, which is its own self-repair and self-healing mechanism. So
mm-hmm.
one of the magic tricks, because I've heard it all, Michelle. I can't meditate, RJ. I've
Yep.
tried, and
Yep.
they absolutely have.
Yeah.
Uh, but we can meditate, and we can all do it now. We can meditate in 1 second. All we have to do is pretend that we just arrived here. No past, no future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The mind stops.
Yeah.
Now you're present. Now there's no story.
Yeah.
Now the longer that we can maintain that, now that doesn't require an effort. The longer that we can maintain non-effort, which sounds so funny, but think about what I'm saying. The longer that we can maintain non-effort, and this is the effortless effort that we've heard people talk about. This is the flow state.
Mm-hmm.
This is what it is. The longer that we maintain that, the more of the real you, the true self, is online. And
Mm-hmm.
your story stops. And guess what? The story of ill health that belongs to your character, the ill health will leave with it as the character is no longer in your life. And that's healing is the deconstruction of the false self. The fastest way to start to deconstruct the false self is to normalize being present. And you can
Mm-hmm.
do just pretend you just arrived here, no past, no future. You can also just say to yourself, I don't know and I don't care.
I love that.
Because what the right. So and now we're right here, right?
Yeah.
And again, to maintain that doesn't require an effort. Okay. Well, now what metaphysically, what I don't know and I don't care what's actually doing,
Yeah.
when we say I don't know, we're
Yeah.
actually wiping clean the mental container.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't care. And now we're wiping clean or dissolving the emotional body. I don't know. I don't care.
Oh, that's
Which
good.
is which is why it
Yeah.
feels so good.
Yeah.
We're getting rid of the garbage,
Yeah.
right? And then we just maintain the beingness, the true self. The beingness is online, and then the beingness into the doingness, beingness into the doingness. That's the
Mm-hmm.
effortless effort, and that's the flow state. It is as simple as that. And as you know, in the latest book, Access Superconscious, has 24 meditations.
Mm-hmm.
And all of them start with 1 second instantaneous meditation magic tricks. So right away, the true self is present.
Yeah.
And then we add the specificities of the meditation based upon what it is that we desire to achieve within that meditation itself. But if we just do any one of those instantaneous meditation magic tricks, we feel much better,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can proceed from that. And the longer that we do that, the less we'll ever hear the voice in our head. And at some point, I promise, at some point, the voice in the head is silenced forever, and it doesn't come back. And I really mean that. It doesn't come back. Now, I just
Mm-hmm.
want to add one thing. That's not necessarily the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The goal is not, well, I have to never think again. I have to always be. No, no. The goal of meditation is to allow you to have dominion over the thoughts so the thoughts don't control you.
Okay.
That's the shift.
Okay.
And if we start to do this, it'll happen. If we stop with trying to figure everything out,
Mm-hmm.
we spend all day, probably every day, all day, trying to figure everything out, right? Let me
Mm-hmm.
research this.
Yeah.
Let me look this up. Okay.
Yeah.
What if we switch that? What if we made the goal of every day of not mentally figuring anything out? You're not your thoughts, so it's useless.
Mm-hmm.
What if we switch the goal from figuring out to how present you can be throughout the day?
Mm-hmm.
Watch what happens to your quality of life and watch what happens to the life that you're able to create when the goal is to be how present, and then you can flow into what it is that you truly desire. That's the game changer. Giving up figuring out and
Mm-hmm.
switching it to how present I can be. And that's when the true self is born.
Reborn, right? Because we're born with,
Reborn.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, oh my gosh. Okay, so many things I want to ask you around what you just said. So the voice that we're hearing though, how do you discern, is this my ego voice or voice of soul, conscious spirit?
Okay. So most of us know the difference between uh, intuition, gut feeling, and
Mm-hmm.
inner knowingness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's wildly different than thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the same energetic quality to them.
Yeah.
They just don't. Thoughts are basically the past and future, past and future, past and future.
And that's ego mind.
100% ego
Okay.
mind.
Okay.
Thoughts, all thoughts come. The ego mind identity has to even be present for a thought to even take place.
Mm.
So when we're present, what we'll actually start to feel is
Mm-hmm.
an intuitive knowingness and excitement, a passion and intuitive knowingness that will actually waft up and inform the mind. So
Mm-hmm.
it's reverse. Thoughts are electrical, and it's just the circular profile of us flipping through our mental Rolodex.
Yeah.
Knowingness is magnetic. It is
Mm-hmm.
it is drawn from within, and it comes up and it actually informs our mind with an idea. So
Mm-hmm.
they have completely different energetic qualities to them. And if we're getting confused about, well, what is the difference between my intuition and my thinking mind,
Mm-hmm.
start practicing meditation
Mm-hmm.
so you can be, and you just use the meditation magic tricks. Takes 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Start
Mm-hmm.
practicing being present.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that you practice that and you're present, the more that you'll tangibly feel the difference between intuition
Mm-hmm.
and the swirling electrical of mental Rolodex flipping. They
Yeah.
don't feel the same at all. And once we meditate enough, it'll become really, really obvious.
And they're fast. It's like a ping pong machine. It's like ping, 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 or ping pong game. And they come from fear,
Yeah.
it seems like too, versus I like what you said, and I agree. They kind of move up through us and they're sometimes whispers, right? It's just
Mhm.
sometimes it's loud, but it's not the screaming that we get when we're up here in the head and it's like, whoa, it's loud and kind of crazy. Um, so then you're saying that the more time we spend in the moment, the more time we spend without that thought, right? But is there a thought then that's coming from the true self?
Okay, so what will happen is if we reverse engineer, right? So we're
Hmm.
present, right?
Yeah.
So we will start to sense this is which is intuition. We'll start to sense a knowingness or a
Hmm.
desire or a passion or an excitement about what to quote do next, what to place our
Hmm.
beingness into what kind of doing this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now,
Hmm.
once we start to get back into flow with the self, right? What will then happen is that the desire and intention, which is the expression
Hmm.
of the true self, the
Hmm.
order of creation is desire, intention, thought, emotion, action, and then behavior. That is
Okay.
the actual order of creation. Without desire, nothing actually ever happens.
Hold on. Can you say that one more time?
Sure, sure. The order of creation
Yeah.
and goes from highest frequency to lowest frequency. So
Okay.
the wellspring of being and non-being,
Yeah.
the first thing that sets everything into motion, into creation, is
Yeah.
a desire, a wish.
That
The,
comes from where?
well, it can either come from your true self,
Hmm.
if you're in alignment with your true self, or you're being programmed by the
Hmm.
matrix, and your ego mind identity will tell you this is what you need to go after.
Okay.
Right. So we have to learn to differentiate, is that my ego mind identity, or is
Hmm.
that my true self?
Hmm.
Now, eventually, desire, intention, thought, emotion, action, behavior will be fed from the true self when we have aligned ourselves to our true desire and intention. Therefore, within
Hmm.
those containers, as it drops down frequentially into the next container, which would be the mental body, the
Hmm.
only information that can drop down into the mental container will be coming from the desire and intention realm. So, what that really means is a master only thinks about what it intends to manifest.
Mm. Okay.
That's what that means.
That's
But
what it
we
means.
but we actually have to learn to differentiate between desires born of personhood, which is a life that really isn't your own,
Hmm.
and the desires born of the true self. And until we start to learn how to differentiate, it's not our life. It literally
Right.
isn't. It's the
Yeah.
matrix, or whatever, whatever word you want to use to describe it. Then you're just obeying the voice in your head. I got to do this. I got to, well, why do you have to do it? Well, because I'm going to run out of this, or I have to, it's fear. You can
Yeah.
feel it. It's fear.
Yeah.
The self has no fear. It's immortal and perfect.
Hmm.
Fear of what? Nothing. Zero. So this is part of feeling into the difference between these things. Feel the energetic quality, but it
Hmm.
starts with the awareness of being present. This will give us the difference between mental machinations and inner knowingness. And then once we've aligned with the inner knowingness, the
Hmm.
desire, intention, thought, emotion, action, and behavior will be in perfect alignment with the
Mm.
self. And this is how we can create without any limitation whatsoever.
Ooh. Because you're creating then from, I'm not sure what you call it, solar spirit or God self.
Yeah, the unlimited, right? The God, the I am,
The
the
I am
the the
presence.
divine, right? Which
Yeah.
doesn't have any limit. Last I checked, God doesn't have any limitations,
I don't think
and
so.
right, and neither do we.
Yeah.
So when we're operating, well, unparalyzing yourself doesn't, no big deal, and I mean it, no big deal. When it's
Yeah.
coming from this thing, now this thing can barely function enough to take the garbage out. It's, oh, well, I got to do that, blah, 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 right? I mean, endlessly. Yet this thing can literally do anything. So this is the shift in human consciousness. And all we
Yeah.
got to do is drop down from here to here and normalize being present. And then your life is finally your own. And then you can create the life that you truly desire. And the thing about this, Michelle, is that these teachings and these meditations and these understandings are so simple
Yeah.
that because they're the truth. They're so simple, they're so tangible, they're so immediate. We
Hmm.
have this concept of spirituality. I don't even use that word because it's
Hmm.
been it's been co-opted.
Yeah.
Excuse me. We have this concept of spirituality that it's
Hmm.
something that we do, not infusing every moment of our life. It's something we take time out for when we go meditate, or we go
Hmm.
to temple, or we go to church, whatever, right?
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
like we have to break out of our life to
Hmm.
do our spiritual practice. The opposite is actually true. If spirituality is worth anything, it should be applicable to every single moment of our day-to-day life.
Yep.
And that's the beauty and the power of these teachings, is that they're applicable,
Yep.
they're easily to understand, and we can employ them for every single moment of our life.
100%. All three books, so easy to apply, to understand. And I can tell, I told you the first time I heard you, I was like, he's speaking truth. It just,
Mm-hmm.
your heart will open. You just feel it in every cell of your body. Um, isn't it true that life happens through us? God is moving. I'm going to use my words. I want to hear your words, but isn't it true that the desires, I just want to finish talking about what you were just saying. So God is having its life through us. So eventually we get to this place where, again, they're not the ego desires. It's this desire that's coming from life itself. So this is why we then have to live, or our goal would be to live with such deep trust
Mm.
that everything's working out perfectly, that we're always right on time, we're on divine time. But we've got to get in this very present moment place so that life can, God, life, energy, whatever you want to call it, is moving through us. And then we have this, the creation of that life. Did I say it right?
100%. The only thing getting in the way of that, the
Yeah.
only thing getting in the way of that, Michelle, is your ego mind identity.
Yep.
The
Yep.
false signal that's blocking the life force, the true signal coming right through.
Yeah.
The only obstacle is the one that we create, which is our human character and all its beliefs, all its
Mm,
roles, all its concepts, all its misperceptions, misunderstandings, and
yeah.
misidentifications, the electromagnetic interference that we have aligned ourselves with so the true life force doesn't come through. It's the only obstacle that exists, and it is created by us because there is no resistance to anything because it's all one thing. If there is resistance, it's
Mhm.
because we have created it. And
Mm,
so all we have to do, and then we can go back to what we said in the beginning about
yeah.
that it is a destructive,
Hmm.
not constructive.
Yeah.
See how we tied that all together, Michelle? So it is
Perfect.
it is a destructive process. The more that you let go
Yeah.
of everything that you're holding on to,
Yeah.
the more that you will literally feel God working right through you.
Mm. So then do we really manifest our lives? Do we really, we co-create with God? We co-create with that I am presence. And it doesn't seem like it is what we have been taught by a lot of these spiritual teachers out there, right?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that.
Did I just
Okay.
open up a giant can of worms right here? I feel like
Yeah,
I did.
no, no, no. This is actually something I'm going to be talking about. This is this is my take on this. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, let's hear it.
Um, I actually think the spiritual community does a massive, massive disservice to people, and I think for the most part, it keeps people broke,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
it keeps them fear-based and disempowered. With every title of every um, spiritual podcast, beware, chaos is coming,
Oh, yeah.
prepare, and end times. I mean, have we thought about for a second that we are actually helping make that reality,
Yeah.
speak it into existence by aligning ourselves with the chaos is coming?
Yeah.
I mean, this is the spiritual community who,
Yeah.
and let's also not mistake spiritual fiction for wisdom,
Yeah.
because that's really what most of that is. And in terms of manifestation, I teach a course that is unlike anything called vibrational engineering, unlike
Mm-hmm.
anything, because the metaphysics of healing is the same as the metaphysics of manifesting anything. It's a repeatable science once you know how to do it. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll say this: I run three different multi-million dollar businesses, and I don't have a whole bunch of employees. I just know how to do it,
Yeah.
and that's part of what I teach. I
Mm-hmm.
understand metaphysics at the highest levels. So the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual community is always talking about law of assumption. You have to wish it. You have to all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to share this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on all those shows.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very quietly and very privately, the hosts of those shows asks me, RJ, how can I make money?
Mm.
So it's so disingenuous.
Yeah.
Okay. So what they're promoting
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work for them,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work for the people watching it.
Yeah.
And yet they're still promoting it. And this is what I mean about the spiritual community is keeping you broke. They
Mm-hmm.
are. And
Mm-hmm.
keeping you disempowered by believing in these worst case scenarios. And by believing in it and giving it your energy, you are actually making it come into fruition.
Mm.
So this is something I'm going to talk more about. I'm glad you brought it up, Michelle,
Yeah.
but that's how I feel about it. And if people really want to understand the enlightened metaphysics of manifestation, I teach a course in it that's unlike anything on this planet or
Okay.
taught on any other planet for that matter.
Yeah. Because there are a lot of them. But there is
Yeah.
something happening, not just with our world, but in the universe right now. But can we just talk about Earth? Like, and I know we're right at the end here, but I don't want to open up a new giant question, but what's happening? Because there is a division. It just feels like there are two Earths within
Mm.
one Earth. Can you
Yeah. Okay.
comment on that?
Yeah, sure. Okay. And I won't, it's tempting for me to go on and on. As you know, I ramble. I'm a professional rambler. Okay.
I love
So
you. I love it though. So whatever you want to ramble on about, go ahead.
I appreciate that. Okay. If we can understand, the first thing I'll say is if we can understand that Earth is a sentient being, but Earth is also what I call a pan-frequential being. So what that means is Earth exists in our third frequency, what we call the third dimension. Earth
Mhm.
exists in the third frequency. There's a version of Earth in the fourth frequency. There's a version of Earth in the fifth and the sixth and the seventh and the eighth and the ninth, the 10th and the 11th and the 12th.
Mhm.
Okay. So
Mhm.
Earth actually exists. Okay. There are versions of humanity on all these different frequencies, right?
Mhm.
So what we're actually seeing, what is really going on is a battle over a timeline. It's what direction, what attention can we grab of the collective consciousness and then steer them in this direction, just like what we were
Mm.
talking about with all
Mhm.
these so-called spiritual channels. Chaos is coming. Beware, be prepared. That is moving us towards an absolute specific timeline. Is that the timeline that we desire? Oh,
No.
oh, oh, right. Okay. So what we're exactly. So what we're really seeing is a battle over disparate timelines.
Okay.
That's what's going on, and it's never been at this heightened state in the history of humanity. It's
Yeah.
never been at this heightened state. So, and I'm going to teach a class on how to actually manifest and put yourself on the timeline of your highest desire. I'm going to teach how to do it, not just talk about it. I'm going to teach how to do it. So if we start to understand that Earth exists in these different frequencies and there's
Mhm.
various timelines sort of battling it out
Yeah.
for our attention,
Mm.
because where your attention goes, your energy flows. And wherever
Mhm.
your energy flows, that's what grows.
True.
So we have to be completely mindful of our attention and intention and our
Mhm.
frequency, because that's how creation actually takes place. So we're seeing a battle, a literal one, a
Yeah.
battle over disparate timelines.
Yeah.
And humanity will put itself on whatever timeline that it most desires to experience. And the one other thing I
Mm.
want to add to that
Mhm.
is that just because we can see things, let's say on the news or on the internet or whatever, just
Mhm.
because we can see so-called chaos
Mhm.
doesn't mean it's the timeline that you're on. I want everyone to understand this. Just
Yeah.
because you're aware of it, that doesn't mean that's for you.
Mhm.
Okay. What's happening is something that I've never seen happen ever, is that there's almost like um, an energetic membrane
Mhm.
where there's this actual separation
Mhm.
happening. You know, just like when you blow bubbles, you can see through the bubble into the next bubble. Okay, this
Yeah.
is kind of what's happening. So just because we can see it, it doesn't mean it's your bubble. And so don't think that, oh my God, I'm witnessing all this. I'm part of this timeline. You're not.
Mhm.
You're not.
Mhm.
You're going to experience the timeline that you most desire to experience. That's how it works. Now, some people are here to experience, we'll just call it, and it's not the right way to say it, but we'll just call it a disparate timeline. I mean, it's just as valid as any other timeline. So that's why I
Yeah.
say disparate is not the right word. But some people are here to experience that. Some people are here to experience this. And just because you can see it doesn't mean it has anything to do with you. So remember to be detached and be super mindful of your attention, where you're putting your energy and what your intention is, because frequency, attention, intention will dictate the reality that we create for ourselves. And like I said, I'm going to teach a whole class on how to do that so each individual can manifest the timeline that they most desire to be on.
So we're not all going toward the same timeline.
No,
Interesting.
no.
And the best way then to live, or the highest way to live, would be just stay in your body, follow your heart. Like, feel, where do you feel moved to? What do you feel moved to pay attention to?
Yeah, your highest excitement and what resonates,
Yeah.
right? So if we're seeing something and we don't
Yeah.
resonate with it, okay, take your attention off.
Take your attention off.
Yeah, stop. It's like, why would you just like, it's like, oh, this book I'm reading is so horrible and violent and
Yeah.
bloody, and I'm
Yeah.
not even enjoying it. Well, then you know what? Stop reading. You don't have to keep pouring your energy and attention into something that you don't desire to experience. So when
But
chaos or whatever it is going on and it doesn't resonate, turn the channel. Turn the channel. Don't fall for I have to do something about that. By turning the channel, you actually are doing something about it. You're not giving it energy and it doesn't grow.
Ooh, that's big right there, what you just said.
Yeah, we have to, and this is what I mean. It's why I'm going to teach a class that we don't understand from my perspective. We don't understand the deeper metaphysics of energy and sentience and the play between these two things and what we're actually creating because
Yeah.
we don't have supreme self control and self discipline over our attention because the ego mind identity is still pulling us over here, trying to figure things out, as I said
Yeah.
before, right?
Yeah.
Don't figure anything out. See how present you can be. And when you're present, you'll have automatic discrimination about what's for you and what isn't through that
Mm.
detachment. And
Mm-hmm.
that's part of the key, how to create the timeline that you most desire to be on. That's part of it. If it's not for you, turn away. Don't keep watching it. Don't keep giving it your energy because it just grows.
Wow, that was big. Okay. So turn off the news. Don't read the stuff that makes you feel bad and gives you
Mhm.
anxiety. Just stop it. Like, don't do it anymore. That's really good. Okay. Access superconsciousness. Who's this book for?
Oh, everyone. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the book is for everyone. As you know, there's 24
Very
uh
easy meditations.
so simple it's
So
almost,
easy.
yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
so tangible and so powerful. So I wrote these things, and these meditations have to do with to go from greed to generosity, from disorder to
Mm-hmm.
order, from violence to kindness. And what I really wanted to do is give humanity a study guide
Mm-hmm.
because the low frequencies is the land of duality.
Mm-hmm.
It's this, it's right or it's wrong. It's good or it's bad. It's
Yeah.
this or it's that. Okay. Well, then how do we navigate through duality? By understanding this side and understanding this side, and then by having the technique and the meditations to move right through the whole thing. And this
Mm.
is how we don't get caught here. Because we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about karma
Yeah.
and getting our energy stuck here. And this is where the suffering comes from. This is where the confusion comes from. So I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
give a study guide or a treasure map to
Yeah.
how to see duality and how to
Mhm.
move right past it. And so it's literally written for everybody.
It's a great book. And I also want to add to this, get the hard copy, but also get the Audible version.
Mm.
I mean, I can feel your voice coming through and the frequencies that you're sharing just in the Audible version. And it's amazing. So thank you for writing not just this, but the other books as well. And I know you have another one coming in a year and a half. Looking
Yeah.
forward to that one as well.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, there's another one. Access Superconscious just came out a month and a half ago or whatever. And then there's the one before that was called Change Your Mind. And the first one was Supercharged Self Healing. And then
Hmm.
the future one, which is I think January, February of 2026, which is a bit of a ways away. But
Hmm.
that's the law of attention, and we've been talking a lot about
Ooh.
yeah. So that's going to take humanity their self control and self discipline over their attention, and your attention is really what it is that you create. So it's
Hmm.
going to give humanity instruction about intention and how to use it, from my perspective, not only properly but optimally. But that book doesn't. We're getting ahead of ourselves. That doesn't come out to January of 2026.
I can't wait for that one either. So thank you so much for today. I feel like we've scratched the surface. Like
Mm.
so much for all of these questions. Like, I didn't even get to any of my questions. It was so wonderful to have you. Thank you so much for being here today. Where would people find you? Where can they learn more about you? Everything you're teaching, all of it. And I will also link the three books in the show notes. But outside of the books, where else can people find you?
My website is it's a long URL. It's ascendthefrequencies.com.
Okay.
So if you go there, there's a newsletter that you can sign up for because I'm always, I have a workshop. I'm not sure when this will air, but I have a workshop coming up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and it's 3 days on meditation mastery. So
Mm-hmm.
when you go to the website, there's often information at the top. If you see
Mm-hmm.
something that you're interested in, you can sign up on the wait list for it. There's a newsletter
Okay.
at the bottom of it, which I suggest people sign up for because I'm always doing something. Speaking of which, I'm about to announce a worldwide meditation to change the planet.
Ooh.
And
Okay.
so the goal, Michelle, is to get at least 100,000 people
Okay.
to meditate with me at a specific date and time. We're all just going to join on YouTube live, and
Great.
I'm gonna lead us in a meditation to change the world. I'm going to announce when I'm doing that. That's coming up very soon. But
Okay.
the newsletter ascendthefrequencies.com, and the YouTube channel.
Yep.
I probably have at this point, I mean, it's over 150 hours of free material.
Yeah.
That's just look up RJ Spina, Ascend the Frequencies, and the
Okay.
same with Instagram is RJ Spina, Ascend the Frequencies, and those are the places to find me.
I'm putting all this in the show notes so people can find you. And yeah, thank you. Please come back. We'd love to have you back.
It was a pleasure. You're a sweetheart. I'll absolutely be back. Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. I appreciate it.
Thank you.